Hey up lads and lasses, Damfire here, back again with some more GR2 content for you today. It is Thursday on the update week, so today it is the Build Fitting Basics series, and good one to go for today because we have finally reached the Battleships. So, the Battleships are your highest damaging ships in the game. It's not carriers. Carriers have the best tanks in the game, but the Battleships where all your DPS will lie, regardless of which type of ship you go for. Pretty much all the Battleships will out DPS the cruisers, with the exception of one, and will out DPS all the carriers as well. So they are pretty much a staple in any of your fleets. Meta fleets include triple battleship setups instead of taking a carrier double battleship or even triple carrier. It's pretty standard in the meta right now to see 3 battleships and a cruiser. So that being said, we'll jump into it and yeah, let's go for it. So we're on S33 because I do have probably some of my strongest battleships here. And we'll start off with my Fog. So the Fog, being a very basic ship, it's easy to grab hold of. You can get the comms for it, for reforming it, and build multiple from the exploration. So it's a fantastic ship for that. With the recent missile buff, it's no longer your laser boat before you build up a legion or anything like that. It is actually very, very strong now. It's not on par with a monster or anything like that, but a monster is much more of a specialized ship. This is a bit more of an all-rounder. It's got one major flaw, and we'll talk about a bit more about that in a second. But this is the basic layout that I recommend. You can drop that shield regen and you can drop on a transition, or you can drop on a T1 transition into there quite easily and give you a little bit of mobility. In some of the tacticals where you need to dodge the torpedoes and stuff, that little tiny jump from a T1 is enough to do so. So it's good to try and stick one on there. I don't think I have one spare, unfortunately, so this is how it's going to look. Missile-wise, you want to run either the cruise or the HE or the clusters. They are the highest damaging types of missile. Cruise by far. I don't have enough cruise to just fully fit a Fog up, but the highest damaging Fogs I have seen have been 7 Fogs. 7 cruise missiles. So that is the way to go. Apparently the burn damage isn't quite enough. Even if you get it to 10 stacks, and I can keep it up on this ship pretty well, isn't enough for the damage loss compared to the cruise missiles. So bear that in mind. Subsystems, depending again on what kind of missiles you're running. I'm running, as you can see, HE and Cluster, which both do kinetic and thermal. They're predominantly thermal damage though. So I've been looking for thermal damage and crit damage. And on the rear, this isn't particularly great crit damage. I believe you can get other damage types on here as well. So you can try and grab hold of maximum range, thermal damage, and something else. Crit damage might be better for the cluster missile setup though. In the middle we have a heavy TH missile. This is the tactical Honeycomb. It's easily upgraded. I quite like the tactical Honeycomb, especially on this ship. You can get it to hit both the subsystems, so you can give it a lot of damage output. Reapers also fits in this slot. Is another 4-slot missile tactical, so it does also get the buffs. I kind of prefer the tactical Honeycomb over the Reapers, and it's just due to the fact that the Reapers do higher damage over when the durability is lower, so the consistency is not quite as good as the HE, especially if it's hitting shields. The HE is just going to out damage the Reaper any day of the week. You can get it in gold as well, so that's quite nice. I just don't have it. Been pretty unlucky on this server in general. This is pretty much the loadout and sort of shapes that you want to go for. This utilizes pretty much every single slot. You can drop a one of these other missiles and try and get another torpedo or something down here if you wanted to, but generally for DPS purposes, having this amount of weapons is good, as I have yet to find cooling on either of the subsystems, which means you can't drop down to the 6 weapons, unfortunately. That as well, and missiles have some of the longest cooling times in the game, so it's a bit of a shame, because if you did get a good roll of cooling on one of these subsystems, you could pretty much jump a lot of damage out, well, a lot of damage on, because you can drop one of the missiles, add attack to cool. You still get all your damage output. But again, easy to reform. It is literally just bonus for crit strike rate and crit strike damage. So if you don't have missiles, it is completely viable to run this with projectiles. So yeah, very versatile ship. Highly recommend. Fog is definitely one of my favorites. Again, we'll talk about this quickly now. Damage increased by 30% when there is no enemy unit within 400 yards. This is extremely difficult to get triggered if you're not microing it yourself. The ship itself does go into under a 400 range, regardless of what missiles you've had on it. And well, it seems random, to be honest. After multiple testing, it just flies into range or it doesn't fly into range. So it is what it is. Steel barriers reduces the damage, the max damage it can take per hit. Not particularly useful on a fog due to the fact that it's got a massive amount of HP and durability anyway, which is further increased by the fact that you're running armor and you should be running armor. So yeah. Has got the flank damage reduction, which is quite nice. So it's a bit more difficult to break the flank armor. The flank armor, if it gets broken, reduces the weapon muzzle velocity, or cooldown I think it is, which increases the time it takes to fire. Other than that, highly recommend the D-Missile plugin. Given your missiles an extra 10% damage is definitely a very good way to go. I'm not sure what else is pretty good in this slot. This is probably the best though. Other than that, yeah, that's about it. Not much of a shield tank, by the way. It is definitely more on the side of armor tanked. Captain-wise, most captains work on battleships. It depends who you've got where. For example, if you have Jim and you don't have a monster, then yeah, sure, put him on your fog. If you've got Jim on a monster, it kind of opens up. Use your initiative a little bit. If you're running, you know, the standard Rand, Jim, Teresa setup, you could put Rand or Teresa on here, for example. Next up, we have the monsters. Now, I have 2 monsters to show you. This is the non-Jim version of a monster. And the reason it's not Jim is because you can drop an extra weapon and it works just as well. So we have obviously a lot of snaking on here. You would preferably want to drop a few of these snaking, maybe 2 or 3 of these snaking, and run Gorse in their place, so you only have 2 snaking. Obviously trying to get purple snaking if you're super lucky and grabbing them from supply. PT gun is really nice on this slot. This allows me to only run 2 PT guns on my entire fleet, 1 on both monsters. So definitely worth a go. And yeah. Subsystem wise, you are definitely looking at cooldown on both. That does seem to be the best way to go for certain. I have tested this against crit damage versions and that sort of stuff with all Gorse builds and all rail builds. The mixture of Gorse and snaking is better if you can get purple snaking anyway. At some points, the rails do win out, but purple snaking will will win eventually. Due to the shape, you have a little bit of room to move stuff around. I've got an EMP on here at the moment because this is my EMP ship for when we're in arena. I'll jump this in, EMP enemy lasers, and then just eat them alive. But you can quite happily fit T3 shields on here if you wanted to. And you can move stuff around as well. I mean, for example, this snaking cannon can go up here, giving you that slot. So there is a little bit more leeway here. You have a single T1 there. There's nothing really you could put here, unfortunately. So just leave it open. Even if you put a anti-air weapon, it can drain your energy and stuff like that, so just ignore it. Reapers fits really nicely on the ship because it's one of the only 4-slot tacticals that goes in a straight line. So this is probably your best in slot at the current moment. I don't believe there are any other maxed out tacticals that have 4 slots in a line like that. So definitely Reapers in this position if you want to run them. You could drop this off, go down to T3 and run say large rapid CNs or defensive CNs quite easily. But yeah, all in all. So this ship does have the projection weapon penetrates target with 36% probability. Sorry. And so what this does is all projectiles on that ship have a 36% chance to ignore shields and just hit the hull. Makes it a very, very powerful ship. I actually believe penetration is still broken in this game due to the fact that you can pretty much almost completely mitigate shields, and for the most part shields is where your tank comes from later in the game, not so much the hull. You have the standard pirate attack battleship stern and flanks with 28% additional damage. I'm not sure what that goes up to total, and it's about 35% or something like that. This just increases damage output of your ship whenever it's on the stern, so the rear of the ship, or on either of the sides, not in front of it. You can trigger this quite easily, especially in tacticals where the tactical will always attack the largest, the tactical bosses, not the fleet, but the tactical bosses will always attack the largest ship in your fleet. So if you're running a carrier, you can get them to kite off one direction, get your monster to move around the other side, and then all of a sudden your monsters behind are on the side getting this bonus damage. So make sure you are using that because it is a lot of damage. Also has the flanks are harder to break, so we talked about that on the fog. Shield, it's not the best, it's not the worst. This ship is a little bit squidgier than other battleships I've seen. However, due to the fact that it has the highest possible damage output at the current moment and the consistency to land it, for example, the EPOS has the same damage output, but against moving targets, the monster will always outwin. It's got a higher damage output, and it's more likely to hit the target. So that's your standard sort of monster build if it's not got Jim on it. This is how I recommend doing it. If you have got Jim on it, though, this is what it should look like to an extent. So it's got the same amount of weapons currently, but you can drop this shield module off. I run the shield at the moment because I was running it in Wolf a few days ago. So in Wolf, having extra shield is fantastic because nothing really penetrates there. So definitely put a shield mod in that situation. In any other situation, drop the shield off. You can add your 7th weapon or 8th weapon, I think it is. 8th weapon. And you will have a slightly increased damage output with enough tank to reasonably beat most things. Again, we are running Cooldown. Again, that is probably the best setup. I've god rolled this one as well with almost 20% cooldown and kinetic energy damage. That's about as high as you can get. Again, PT in the middle. This brings it down to 6.3 seconds. I could re-roll this top sub to get this cooldown a little bit, but even at 6.3 seconds, it's got a pretty good chance that it's firing every single of the 6-second cycle, or the 5.5 6-second cycle. So it's pretty good in that position because that means you can almost certainly keep your fragile up, giving you a flat 50% damage again, crit damage for all of your ships within the fleet. Plugin wise, some monsters is pretty standard. Obviously, standard armor, really useful. Projectile damage per second. The damage version of this is definitely the one you want to go for. Pretty much ignore the rest. The damage projectile, I don't have one, unfortunately, on this account. But yeah, definitely the way to go. Small reactors I find really useful for Ymir on this ship. Ideally, you want the large reactors, but I haven't managed to get any on this account either. So large reactor probably in this slot, and it gives you more of a utility slot in the lower section. Shields, more or less the same as the other one. Reforms, you want to try and get obviously your durability up first and faster than most other things. You then have your kinetic damage, crit strike, crit rate, and kinetic energy resistances. These are your best options. Calibration rate really does help, especially if you're running snaking builds. Dodge rate's really nice, momentum's. Most of the reforms are pretty good. The energy capture is probably the only one you don't want to go, but I recommend going durability first, and then sort of mixing your damage up with the crit strike damage and kinetic energy damage of projectiles, and then maybe getting a bit of the kinetic energy resistance while you go. But yeah, that's more or less it. This is an absolute beast of a ship. You will see it everywhere. It's by far the strongest ship damage-wise in the game, and because of that, people are now running things like triple monster fleets and double monster fleets that are very, very strong and definitely worthwhile going for. We're going to switch over now to S2 because I have a few more of the battleships over there actually unlocked and semi sort of built at least. So I will show those off over there. So we'll be right back. Okay, we're back and here is the Legion. So the Legion is the Empire's attempt at trying to make a monster. It fails tragically, and you're left with something that kind of looks like it's got a funny face. But yeah, I can't actually rate this ship too high. In comparison, damage-wise to monsters, it doesn't sit particularly well. Slightly better damage than a Fog to an extent. But yeah. So this is the build that I run. It runs triple decon, 2 XNTs, and then I've got a couple of little tiny slots that I'm just trying to fit stuff into, as you can see. Weapon cooldown's pretty good on here because it drops the cooldown from, I believe, 15 seconds or something on a deconstruction ray down to 12.1. Yeah, 15 seconds. So it's a massive amount of cooldown. If you can get the plugin, which is laser cooldown, another 10%, that will further bring your cooldown down. Cooldown down? Yeah, it is cooldown down on decons, and it will increase its damage output even further. At the point where you can get the cooldown enough for it to be reasonable, around 10 seconds, it can actually perform pretty well. The problem is it's got these weird mixed subsystems where you've got missiles on the top and you've got laser on the bottom. Now, with the missile bonuses that recently came through, you can potentially run this with missiles instead of these XNTs. I haven't updated this build since the missile change because I don't play on S2 much anymore. So these XNTs could be dropped in favor of maybe potentially cruise missiles or HE missiles, which might do better in certain situations. I quite liked having the XNTs on here due to the fact that the little tiny bit of energy drain they give helps a little bit. I am running an energy NT field here as well, so there's quite a bit of energy drain. The dual DMG is almost a must. It's between the dual DMG and the AM laser that you want to be running on this ship. You don't necessarily need to be running on it, but this ship is stationary anyway, and that's one of the main downsides of using one of these lasers. So if the thing's staying still anyway, having the dual DMG is quite nice. It chucks out a hell of a lot of damage. It's potentially more damage output if you put it down into this slot. You can roll it so it fits down here and hits this subsystem. At that point, it might be better down there, but you would have to change your rolls to at least have some energy EM damage, which I think might make it subpar on DPS, but it will give it a higher alpha strike. So yeah, there's not much I can say about this ship really. I really don't like it. So when the whip speed of the ship is 0, the calibration rate, which is the chance of it hitting target, with lasers that lock on so they always hit target, which is a completely waste of time. But it does get the critical strike rate increases by 36%. This does mean that it's critting pretty regularly. With a good captain on here that's maxed out, you can get the crit rate well past 60% just on the ship alone. And then on top of that, you probably are running a Strike CN or a Global CN somewhere in your fleet. So as soon as that buffs up, this thing's got a 100% crit chance on weapons that do horrendously large alpha damage. For example, this thermal damage, 5k is not much, obviously, but 21,000, and then you're going to get 50% just for critting, plus fragiles another 50%. So you're looking at 100% damage increase very quickly on weapons that can pretty much just end the life of something on low HP. So definitely quite good damage output, but the problem is the way it deals the damage compared to a monster, it's not quite as consistent, so its DPS is lower. It does have a higher alpha though. Plugin wise, Cooldown laser plugin is what I would recommend here. The damage type plugin for lasers only increases the damage versus shields, which I don't think is particularly as useful. Reactor is going to be quite useful, and obviously standard armor is probably best in the slot. Creature armor might also be good here as well, and some of the other armor types in varying situations. Got long range strike, which increases the weapon range, which makes it a bit more of a sniper, which makes it stay back, which is quite nice, so it's not getting shot at quite as often. Although it's odd because this is probably one of the tankiest battleships in the game. It has quite a good amount of durability, and it can sit there and tank quite a lot. Also has the bonus extra shield module, so its shields are going to be quite strong. I unfortunately haven't maxed this one out at all. Reforms, a bit more difficult to get due to the fact that it's a Krypton only purchase, so it will turn up in the store, and it will also turn up in the Star Merchant. But yeah, it's not a bad ship. It's alright. We then have the Unicorn. This ship is amazingly bad. So much so that this one got recycled, and I tried to get it up again, and I decided to recycle it again and tried to fix it, and yeah, it's now sitting in this position of half built. This is due to the fact that it has this massive design flaw, which is confront the enemy head on. Frontal damage reduced by 10%. Battleship has only frontal muzzle, which means it can only fire weapons forwards. Now, that doesn't sound too bad, right? Until you look into the mechanic that if a weapon is facing forwards and using its frontal weapons, its frontal muzzle, you only fire 2 weapons every 6 seconds, compared to on wing where they fire 4 weapons per 6 seconds. So this puts you in a really awkward situation when you've got this, what seems to be like an interesting and fun thing, and it's got increased damage reduction, and okay, yeah, it's got this range improved calibration rate, bullet speed, but none of that increases damage, and the shield recharge, the conversion thing, that's quite nice as well. So it becomes this really tanky ship. It can sit there and tank a lot of damage, but it has no damage. It has absolutely 0 damage output. Cruisers outdamage a Unicorn. An entire hull below the level this is, and a cruiser will outdamage this. Might not be able to outlast the Unicorn, because like I said, this thing for tanks, crazy. I mean, 24% of the thermal damage it receives is converted to shield value. I don't know what the max out version of that is, but it's quite a bit. All of a sudden your shields are just jumping up like that when someone hits you with a deconstruction ray. Reduced damage, I'm not sure what that goes up to, but it's just a flat damage reduction. And because of this, the ranged improvement, it's staying miles away. So it's sniping from the rear, so very few things are going to be able to shoot at it from the range. Monsters need to get to it to be able to do any damage to it, and it's already dishing damage out to them. So in theory, it sounds great, but the damage output is absolutely garbage. Subsystem-wise, you have a laser front and a universal on the back. This is, see, I would love to love this ship, but I have to hate it because of how bad it is. The fact that it's got this, which means you can turn this subsystem into any damage type that you like. If you want to run 2 lasers and stick yourself, you know, an AM gun in the middle, you're going to be dishing out tons of damage from that AM gun. Problem is, you got no follow-up because it'll only fire 2 weapons, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was such a cool design, and it's a cool design. It kind of looks like a transformer or something. It's very, yeah, it's so close. Unfortunately, I can't recommend this at all. Any new players watching this, don't get it. It is a complete waste of your resources. Just don't get it. Get yourself a monster, or get yourself even a fog. So we have one last ship. Oh no, we have the Arbitration. Okay, I have very little experience with this, unfortunately, due to the fact that lasers aren't in the best of position. This particular ship is reformed more specifically to EM. It has EM and laser thermal damage, but if we look at the plugins, it's EM and Cooldown on a main gun. Just to note, this is the only battleship, I believe, that has a specific cooldown for the main laser gun. So if you are desperately wanting to run a standard DMG, not the dual, or an AM gun, this is potentially your better option if you want to give it massive buffs, because these do roll slightly higher damage attributes than the standard plugins. The biggest problem with this ship is its shape. It's got this hole in the middle. So, as you can see, you've got these lovely little lines that you can come down here and you're like, oh, look at that, we can get 4 lasers on this subsystem. No, not allowed. That shape, downwards right diagonal, does not exist on any single laser. Which means you have to go for something like this, which takes up 2 slots, and now you've only got 3 potential lasers. Why did they design it like that? Like, seriously. This could have been really cool and really fun to see, roaming around in an arena, firing off this mega laser blast of death and destruction, and being able to follow up with a decent barrage of lasers. Lasers have lock-on as well. It would be great in wars for a cleanup ship. The build, unfortunately, because of this shape, would mean that you have 1 laser running down here, 1 laser running down here. You can potentially get a deconstruction ray. I believe you can get them in that shape. You can certainly get it in that diamond shape, though, so you can run that if you wanted to. So you can run a decon up here, 2 lasers of your choice down here. Considering this is an EM bonus, I would probably say run Etherics. Etherics for XNT. This then gives you a little triple slot here, so you can put, you can put more lasers on here. So you'd be running a decon, 2 lasers, 3 lasers, 4 lasers including decon, 5 lasers up here, or you can even run this. Leaves you room for the AM gun, or if you wanted to ignore having a main laser, you can run 7 lasers quite happily with the deconstruction ray on here. So you can run, yeah, it's not bad for fitting, it's just this shape. If you could get that shape, it'd probably be really, really strong ship, and maybe be on par with, say, the Epos and the Monster for damage output. Unfortunately not. So yeah, again, don't have much to say about this ship. Tactical main cooldown reduced by 20%. I'm not sure what that goes up to max. but you can get a lot of cooldown. This is the thing, you can get a lot of cooldown. You can get cooldown on this subsystem, it comes with it, which means you're guaranteed the cooldown roll, so now you're just looking for damage output. You got cooldown on this main gun specialization. If you stick an AM gun on here, I bet you can get it to close to fire all the bloody time, which makes it very, very, potentially very strong, as long as, you know, you're not running into EMP, people aren't transitioning you. So yeah, it's potentially very, very strong. Unfortunately, I don't have one. If anyone has one and has a really good setup for it and can show me some pictures and stuff like that, drop into my Discord, link is in the description below, and yeah, come have a chat in there. Also drop comments. But yeah, so I can't really recommend or not recommend this ship due to the fact that I haven't really played with it much. It's always been here, just sat here, collecting dust, unfortunately for me. I've been too busy concentrating on other ships. Last but not least, we need one more switch to go to the EPOS, and we're going to go have a quick look at that. Right, so we're back onto S52. Well, not back onto S50, we're on S33, then S2, then S52, so there you go. S52 was my most built up EPOS, and that is the last battleship we are going to talk about. So this battleship fits really well in most fleets. It has some slight downsides. I kind of fixed them a little bit with this setup. It's not perfect though. We'll talk about those in a second. What it can do is it can at least keep up with a monster, which is absolutely crazy because nothing else is really that close. Now the EPOS can keep up with a monster and potentially outdamage it. This is the only ship that came into the game since launch that's had the potential to upturn the king monster off its throne. So let's have a talk about torpedoes in general and how they sort of work. So torpedoes fire, there's a little sort of charge time on them where they're like moving slow and then they speed up. The problem with that little tiny bit of slowness is the ship they're now targeting at is now moved out the way. So when that torpedo flies off and increases its speed, the ship's no longer there, so it misses. This is the biggest problem with torpedoes, just in general. The nanos have a slightly less of an issue of it. They don't seem to charge up, they do just seem to fire. They also fire multiple warheads, so you have an increased chance that one of the multiple warheads will hit. So anti-ships, highest damaging torpedo by quite a bit actually. If it hits, it does massive chunky damage. You can see, like, you'll see this one slow torpedo on this ship and it will do like 20-30,000 damage by itself. Nanos, a little bit more kind of like snaking cannons in that sense. They fire lots of little shots and smaller damage numbers, but overall, good damage if all of their warheads hit. So I do recommend running nanos on here, and this is due to the fact that they have a better chance of hitting moving targets and mixing them up with anti-ship to increase your damage if your target stops moving or you damage its engines, or you have a ship like a Fell Hunter that can slow enemies with tractor rays or anything else running tractor rays for that matter. So yeah, it's a pretty good ship. I'm still testing this one a little bit. I'm running a large LA propeller on it, and this is due to the fact that don't know if you remember, but a few months back there was an event on where there was an EPOS as a pirate, and I ignored it one day, and instead of like just targeting it to kill it off as quickly, I just sort of AFK'd it and just let it do its thing, and I came back and my fleet was almost destroyed. I was running double monster. Both of them level 950 with good shields, one had Jim on it, maxed out weapons. I was running a carrier as well in there, my Immortal with XNTs. And I think I was running the Centurion as well. So it was a pretty strong fleet setup. I come back and I see half my ships are blown up and my last monster's almost dead as well. I didn't realise it was due to the fact that this thing's large propeller, 'cause that's what it must have had on it, was moving around so fast that nothing could shoot it. So I thought I'd test it out for myself. It does seem to work as well. This thing stays in battle for years, just because things can't hit it. Unfortunately, a lot of the exploration missions, seem to be Empire running lasers with lock-on, so this isn't quite so useful. In Arena, it's quite funny when someone's gym monster fires a salvo at this thing and it just moves out the way and flies past it. Dustmaker I recommend on here. I recommend Dustmaker over Comet. It's mainly due... I don't think I have a Comet. I don't have a Comet on here. I recommend the Comet on... Sorry, the Comet. I recommend the Dustmaker on here. See, look, this is what happens when you talk for too long. I recommend the Dustmaker on here due to the fact that it's got a great damage output. It doesn't need to be right next to it like the Comet does to have its maximum damage output. It will always hit very, very hard, very, very strong. The Cosmic Dust is quite nice because torpedoes are quite short range, so blocking the enemy range or reducing the enemy range to get them to move closer to you is going to increase the amount of time that you can get, well, increase the speed that you get to them, and therefore increase your damage output sooner. So definitely run a Dustmaker if you can fit one. I believe this is the best positioning for a Dustmaker on this top sub. You do want to probably roll kinetic energy damage here, will always roll, but you probably want to roll thermal damage on here. If you can run thermal damage with flight speed for torps, that will help a bit. But cooldown will probably help slightly more. With that setup, you want to run 2 anti-ships. Unfortunately, I only had 1 anti-ship while I was building this. I have picked up another one, so I will be getting that up and putting it where this nano is. There'll be another nano going in here, which will give me a total of 4 nanos, 2 anti-ship, giving me 6 weapons. There is a cooldown on here. What I should do, and I should do that now because I've just seen it, is move that round like that. And that way, I get more damage output because now I've got 2 nanos on cooldown. Can you get 3? No. 1. I should play around with this fit a little bit more maybe, but no, you can only get at max 2 torpedoes on this bottom sub. So that's fine. You can get potentially 4 on this top sub, but due to the fact that the Dustmaker's shapes are a bit odd, it's going to limit you to maybe 2, potentially 3. You could drop the Dustmaker on this build and add more anti-ship up here, but I don't recommend it. This is pretty useful. You'll see. I am running the CN on here at the moment. Like I said, this will get replaced by another nano. And yeah, it's got pretty good damage output. Again, I have seen builds of EPOSs keeping up and out-damaging monsters, having higher DPS, higher alpha, higher everything. It's got a better tank. It's faster. It's just a shame torps are a little bit too slow. If they increase the torp speed, this will probably knock the monster off its throne. Yeah, again, plugin wise and warship features, you have the regular torpedoes have a 26% chance of continuous firing. What this does is when a weapon fires, as basically a chance to just fire again straight away. This means that you have almost like a gym-like ability on a ship without having to need gym on it. Now, you can put gym on it, and it does trigger when gym fires as well, so this is where its damage output, I think, is really coming from. It also has flank reduction, so it's getting 20% reduced damage on the flanks, and it has the first 6 damage received are invalid. This means that any damage source, so a Dustmaker hits when its shield's just dropped, it won't receive any damage, that kind of thing. Plugin-wise, so because of the speed issue Torpedoes has, I haven't been able to test this, but there is a high-speed torpedo plugin, which increases torpedo speed. Then maybe the speed boost on the subsystems as well might be able to get it into a position where its damages are considerably more consistent. Against stationary targets, though, this is probably the one you want to go for if you're going into tactical or enemy invasion. This is probably the one you want. In most of the situations, it's going to be a toss-up between the 10% additional damage or the high speed. Ship durability, any armor is pretty good. Standard armor is probably best. Creature armor would work also on here. There is a lot of different armor types. I do need to go through and test them all properly now again. Because with the new added armor types, there is potential for some more interesting armor setups than just the standard armor, because the standard armor gives ship durability bonuses %, which is quite nice. Again, large reactors really good on here, and you have 2 slots to do whatever you want with. Shield-wise, it has got the extra shield module, which does make its shields quite tanky, so it's got great tank in there. It's got pretty good durability. This is only level, Order 8, 45, so I've got 945 to go, so I'm expecting this to be around 40,000 durability without the captain. It also has an absurdly large amount of durability reforms for some reason. I'm not sure if that was intended or not, but abuse it. Because this goes up really high, and this increases its tank to ridiculous levels. I think this might be the tankiest battleship now in the game. I think it might outweigh the Legion, which used to be the best tank. But I think this one might beat it now. Captain-wise, again, it's the case of, are you running a monster? Well, Jim should be on it. If that is the case, run Ran Teresa. If you're not running a monster, this is a fantastic Jimbo. Again, like I said, with this alignment warship feature, this thing's going to be dishing out absolutely tons of damage. So yeah, Epos, worth a look at. Little of a paywall behind it because you can only get it from the shop. So yeah, it sucks a bit. It's a pain to get up actually because it doesn't even come in Star Merchant. It's literally only the mall. So yeah, it took me a while to grab hold of this on S52 and start building it. But yeah, definitely a good ship. Similar design to this would work very well. Again, if you got any other designs for setups, drop a comment below, and again, you can come into Discord and drop pictures and stuff in there and have discussions about it. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a good one. We have the carriers next, so that will be next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, unless there's some crazy balance patch that comes, so you never know. That will be next Tuesday, and yeah, so the votes have ended now. I forgot to mention that in Tuesday's video. For the channel, so we will be doing anything sci-fi. So there we go. So there will be a sci-fi game series coming up. I am not sure what to do. I will probably start streaming some Elite Dangerous now because I've sort of got back into that after 5 years break from the beta, so everything's pretty new to me, so that's going to be a bit of fun. I've been playing a little bit on and off in my own time. So yeah. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a good one, and I'll catch you next time.